Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Tai'Shar Manethrin, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Will.
I'm Sam.
And we're on the fourth and final portion of our walk through the Dragon Reborn. So we're excited to get to a very exciting conclusion. This is really a lot happens in the last quarter of this book. We're going to dive right in. Sam, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, chapter 45. Matt and Tom get to Camelin at last. Matt is trying to deliver Elaine's letter and almost gets himself arrested. Didn't get the memo that there was a new head honcho in Camelin. Lord Gabriel is running the show. Gate officer accuses him of being a dark friend. He gets away. Then he goes and meets up with Basil Gill and Tom, who are playing stones. And
yes.
Basil says that Lord Gabriel has replaced the guards in Camelin, and Gareth Bryn has been forced out. Matt rolls the dice and gets the Dark One's eyes, 5 single pips. And I think Tom says something like that could be the best or the worst hand, depending on what game you're playing.
Thinks he's going to play a dangerous game.
Right. So Matt decides to break into the palace the same way that Rand did, by scaling a wall. Like, seriously, why did they not do something about that after Rand pulled it?
They do kind of hang a lampshade on it when he says, "Well, I climbed the wall," and somebody says, that flaming wall." It's the same.
Right. The same
it should be built. And they're like, yes, why don't you go do that right now?
Right. He hears a man tell another to find and kill Elaine.
Right. No big deal. Just
no big deal. But then when he goes to the throne room and hears Lord Gabriel, he realizes it's the same voice.
Right.
So he was all ready to tell Queen Morghese that he'd heard this plot, but realizes he can't because this man who's now in charge and has the Queen's ear is in the throne room, so he can't tell her. So he decides to play dumb. Plays like a country bumpkin, and Lord Gabriel just eats it up, gives him the 10 gold marks, and says, "Go see the world." Yes,
and at this point, we are kind of given a picture that something is up, more than just
because Morghese should be this kind of strong, powerful, independent woman, and she's kind of not being herself. Pretty clearly.
Right. She's described as like making eyes at him and everything, all very different from the Morghese we met in Eye of the World and the one that is being described anytime that she's referred to as being by Tom or elsewise as being her own person. And this is, you do start to think, okay, there's something going on here. It's not clear what yet.
Right. So we get a little mini scene here with Matt and Talon Vor, and essentially see that Talon Vor is loyal to Morghese, even when it seems like most of the court, most of the guards are, loyal to Gabriel. Not really, but he doesn't tell Talon Vor anything. He just decides to go back to Tom.
I want to pause here for a second and there is an interesting moment when Morghese reads the letter.
Yeah.
She says to Matt, very specifically, to go back and tell Elaine that she particularly enjoyed those times speaking to Shiriam in her study. And Talon Vor asks, "What does that mean?" later. And Matt's like, "I don't know." And I have to say, it really does sound like some kind of
a message.
A message.
Yeah.
But even as a person who's read through it now,
not really sure what it means.
Yeah. Or if she really was just saying, I just really enjoyed hanging out with Shiriam in her study.
Right. Because Morghese, of course, did also study in the White Tower, even though she's not force sensitive, so to speak.
Yeah.
So Matt goes back to the inn and says he's going to head for Tyr because he wants to stop Komar, the dark friend, from killing Elaine, and starts asking Basil Gill about Gabriel a little bit, finds out that the guy just kind of showed up during the winter, led the men supporting Morghese during riots. It's like, probably he started the riots. Seems like he was probably responsible for that.
Yeah.
And so there's not really a lot of information. We don't really know who he is. Matt kind of explains that Gabriel wants Elaine dead, and so they just realize they need to do something. Tom suggests one thing that's kind of interesting. Tom suggests that Basil spread rumors about Gabriel that will get back to Morghese so that she'll find out the truth, and then, the idea being that she would kick him out if she knew the truth about him. Of course, we know that that won't work, but it's a good idea. It's a good
I
start.
love the detail of how Basil says, well, I've told a dream of mine before to so-and-so, and then I've heard it from so-and-so who swore they got it from three men who swore it happened to him, and all this, and how rumors tend to swell and grow and shift and everything. That's something that is a big part of the way that these books go. And later still, you have this funny thing that happens when rumors are being described where the narration will say, well, this happened. No, this happened. Well, no, this happened. And everything. So it's a fun little note of how, yes, indeed, rumors are, as Tom says, the voice of the people, but they're also heartily inaccurate quite often.
Indeed. So with that plan in place, Tom and Matt set off for Tyr, and we leave our heroes to their work. And back to an Egwene dream montage that is once again full of spoilery imagery.
Yes, so we have a white cloak putting Master Luhan in the middle of a huge tooth trap for bait. Perrin with a falcon on his shoulder. Perrin choosing between his axe and a hammer. Matt dicing with the dark one. Rand sneaking through the darkness toward Kalandor, followed by 6 men and 5 women, including a man with eyes of flame. Rand in a dry, dusty chamber with small creatures settling onto his skin. Rand confronting a horde of Shan-Chan, and Rand confronting her, as she has a Shan-Chan woman with her.
Lots of imagery. So surprisingly, it seems like they get to Tyr first, except maybe Rand, who's sort of like, everyone seems to bump into him and be like, oh, that's not really him. But which I wouldn't have expected them to get there first. But we do get a little bit of a description of the Stone of Tyr, which is interesting. It's this sort of just this mountainous structure that was built using the power, as opposed to being brick and mortar, just being built by hand. And it's sort of ironic, since the Tyrants' high lords do not take kindly to channeling. They don't want anyone involved with channeling remotely nearby, even though their fortress was built with a power.
Well, and they even kind of point that out, that there's a lot of hypocrisy in Tyr. They also have like the largest collection of Angreal outside of the White Tower in the Stone of Tyr, objects of power.
Right, which we do in later books. Some of those objects of power, such as a certain twisted doorway, become very important.
Right, yes. The Stone of Tyr, the way it's described as like not having seams, kind of, that it's just like this one huge domed kind of thing. You know what I picture? Stone Mountain.
Yeah, okay.
I like smaller than that, but basically the same thing. If you don't know, Stone Mountain is located outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and it is one of the largest, it may be the largest single granite deposit in the world or something like that, but it's just a portion of it is sticking up above the earth. Most of it is below. It's actually where the stone that built the Lincoln Memorial was taken out of, interestingly enough. But it's this huge rock, and you see it for miles, and it's just a big smooth rock sticking up over the horizon.
The surrounding landscape is fairly flat too.
So that's kind of, and Tyr is described as being flat, and it's down there by the coast. So that's kind of the way I picture it, is as you ride up on it, that you can't help but see the Stone of Tyr from every direction that you approach Tyr on, because it's just so big, and the whole, it's this big stone looking building.
Right. So they decide, of course they are there to hunt the Black Aja specifically, and so Nynaeve says, well, they probably shouldn't stay at an inn so that they don't trigger the Black Aja, I suppose. So she does kind of a creative thing. She finds a house that has herbs out in that has evidence of a local wise one, a wisdom, whatever you want to call it. And so we meet Mother Gwenna, who is the local wisdom, whatever their name is and so they kind of have a back and forth about wise one, wisdom things and what various herbs are used for, testing each other. And finally, Nynaeve convinces her to let them rent a room from her after kind of talking to her for a while. And then they also say that they would like a thief catcher to help them find their dark friends that they're looking for. So Mother Gwenna introduces our drop-in Huron replacement, Julian Sandar.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of Shinar, we get ourselves a Tyron.
Right. Yes. Very, very similar. And like I think we said earlier, it could very easily combine these two characters in one way or another.
Yeah.
either having Huron follow them to Tyr or having him just show up in Tyr, and either one, or vice versa, just have Julian be the one somehow. Either way,
Right.
and both of them are likable characters and have some distinctions, but obviously Huron being a sniffer is a pretty big thing in the previous book.
That could be a factor that if they chose him would affect other, could potentially impact other scenes if, since Julian obviously doesn't have that power. Maybe not. I mean, this could be glossed over, but that is a good point. So he does agree to help them look for the Black Aja, and he's just going to ask around. I just picture him going to dive bars, and like, so looking for a lady with curly hair and mole on her nose or whatever.
Yeah.
Which we later see backfires because, of course, once they hear that someone's looking for them, they're going to look for the guy looking for them. So we get ourselves a Teleron Riyadh sequence. Egwene is sort of gaining her footing a little bit here. She's still a babe in the woods, but she understands a little bit about how the rules work and dreams herself into the Stone of Tyr, where she sees the Black Aja meeting in Teleron Riyadh and gets away, luckily, but thinks, oh, they may have seen me, I don't know. She has confirmation the Black Aja are in the Stone of Tyr. So back to Matt and Tom. They get to Tyr and immediately start looking for the girls. We get one detail here that Tom has a terrible cough. They're the weather's terrible. Matt's like really intent on finding the girls or finding Komar, so he's like pushing them really hard. And Tom's not feeling good. He's an older dude. He's pushing harder than he'd like to be. Matt, this is one of those things we'll talk about. Matt sees a tall man, but just misses the idea that it could be Rand. Like, it is though. Like, come on, man. Like,
he also passes a shop with herbs in the window.
Right.
Because, his luck was actually presenting him with, hey, if you're trying to find the girls, here they are.
Right. But he didn't pay attention at that point. Wasn't keyed into it. But he does find Komar, who's dicing with weighted dice. So Matt plays him and wins, even though Komar had the weighted dice. They fight. Komar dies. But before he dies, he admits he hasn't found the three women yet. But he is not the only one looking for them. So their search is not over, even though Komar is.
Yes.
Rest of the gang get to Tier 2. We get ourselves Perrin's perspective. We get ourselves a little blacksmith montage. After Perrin notices there's one just kind of next door to the inn. So he's like, oh, okay, I'd like to go get my blacksmith on a little bit. So Fael follows him and gets to see him get all sweaty. So.
Yes. Yeah, I could almost see this being played for humor where
right.
She's sitting there looking like,
biting her lip a little bit. Yeah, sure.
All right. Yeah.
And Perrin walks in. He's like, yeah, I'm an apprentice. And then by the end, the blacksmith's like, no, you're not. Why did you even say that? And lets him keep his hammer. So, and this starts the whole thing with the hammer. It's like the hammer or the axe. He's like, especially in the next book, it's like, should I have the hammer or should I have the axe? I guess the idea being, should I really just want to be a blacksmith? I don't want to be a fighter. But the imagery is muddled slightly when he uses the hammer like the axe.
Right.
He's fighting with it. Like, well, I guess even if you choose the hammer, you're still going to be bashing heads in. So
yeah. Well, there is in the last trilogy. There's this phrase he says. This doesn't spoil anything, I don't think, where he kind of explains the difference between the hammer and the axe, and that is both can be used to destroy, but really only the hammer can be used to create.
Oh yeah.
And so that's good. The difference in his mind is that the axe is purely something that destroys, versus a hammer can destroy, but it can also create.
That's good. Yeah, no, I'd forgotten all about that. But that's a very good point. So Moraine shows up once again and says, High Lord Salmon, who we heard mentioned before, is Bilal, the Forsaken. So this is once again, I'm picturing like the most wanted poster from Harry Potter with like the Sirius Black's face on it. Like that's how she does it.
I just figure he's got one of those little gold necklaces that like middle school girls do with their names on them that he just forgot to tuck into his shirt. She's like sitting there and going, hey, it's Bilal. And he's like, oh, dang.
Right. Or he still has his name tag from the Dark Friend social.
Yes, that's true. Hi, my name is Forsaken.
She seems to know a lot about his plan. Again, like I guess that's as plausible if she's got eyes and ears in the stone. But Bilal wants to let Rand take Kalendor, so he's sort of trying to draw him out, and then he's going to take it from him. That's his whole plan. He knows only Rand can pull the sword from the stone. He's the chosen one, but he's going to take it once Rand pulls it. That's the plan. And Moraine's plan is to stop him with balefire, which is kind of her answer for everything lately.
Yes.
Lan remarks that there are Aiel in town, so he's seen them on the rooftops. Perrin mentions his interaction with Gaul and that the Aiel are seeking he who comes with the dawn, and that when they find him, that the Aiel will leave the Three Folds land. And Moraine's like, that's not in the Prophecy of the Dragons at all.
Yeah.
But there's much we don't know.
That's true. The Aiel kind of are referenced in the Prophecies of the Dragon. They're just not called the Aiel.
Indeed, they are. So she asks Loyal if he has any information about Bilal. And I can't remember who it was. Someone was like, why are you asking Loyal? And Moraine says, well, the Ogier are long-lived, and there's only been a few generations since the Age of Legends for them. They would have they have a longer memory, and they generally take good notes. And Loyal doesn't have much information. He just says Bilal turned to the shadow because he was envious of Lews Therin, and and this was I thought this was an interesting detail. He was involved in the raising of the Hall of the Servants before Lews Therin and the 100 Companions sealed him with the Dark One.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say, I think it would be cool if we got some mini flashbacks to
for sure.
Some of and I know there are lengthy scenes set in the Age of Legends, particularly in the next book in Roidion. But like these epic moments, Lews Therin and his 100 Companions sealing the Dark One, or I'm just thinking Lord of the Rings style.
Oh, sure.
Just the Titanic battles. Like, we just need some of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, the people that were wondering if we were ever going to get Tom Maryland cast announcement, some people were wondering aloud, kind of, is it possible that Tom would get cut? And kind of giving a reason for, he doesn't exactly have a direct impact on the plot in a lot of ways. He's kind of more just there to add to things. And I disagreed with that because I was saying, well, there's more to a story than to further the plot.
Right.
Tom doesn't directly further the plot, but he is as much part of the setting as anything else. He's important, both his role as a Gleeman and what does that mean, and the way people react to him and the way that he puts on his Gleeman show and everything. Right. But also, because that's rich. That's just rich imagery and it gives you an idea of the way the world is. But not just that, also the fact that he can be really great for giving exposition. Somebody commented, I think, when I said that, oh yeah, because people love exposition dumps. And I'm like, well, no, not like he's going to sit there and talk and the camera's going to stay on him. I'm picturing it like you're saying,
some of these scenes, yeah,
right, yeah, like the beginning of Lord of the Rings starts with a prologue that, if you've never read the books, you would be shocked to find is not there at all. Much like these books, you have to kind of get bit by bit what happened along as different people kind of mention to you, oh, here's what happened, and this is what happened with Saruman and all this. Well, the same thing could be true. There could be flashbacks in this that give you a more rich idea of the history, particularly, for example, in the last book, when we meet Arthur Hawkwing, that would have a lot more impact if we had more of a backstory on who Arthur Hawkwing was.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. That's a good way to go about it. And that scenes like that would be really expensive and epic. And it's like, yeah, I know all that, but just do it, please.
Yes.
Do it anyway. It doesn't have to be too many of them, but please do. We need some epic scenes in this. Definitely.
Well, and that's what's funny about Lord of the Rings. That opening scene was not a part of the original script. It's something that they added kind of late in the process of producing the films, that they realized, hey, people probably need this.
Yeah, to understand what the heck, frame it, so to speak.
So it was kind of a bit of an afterthought, and yet it's this huge epic beginning that helps, as you say,
to the whole show.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I would actually love it. I again, like you say, it may be too expensive. I would love it if they even started with something like that.
Yeah, and there is the chance, because the actual prologue is set in the Age of Legends at the end of the Age of Legends.
Right.
So you could easily just flesh that out just enough to show I don't know, the 100 companions actually sealing the Dark One in his prison and the Dark One reaching out and tainting Saidin. Have a little montage of the male Aes Sedai losing their minds, breaking the world. That I think is delivered just in exposition by Ishmael, perhaps, in the prologue. And there's no reason you couldn't just go ahead and just do that rather than having it be exposition.
Right. So exactly.
The only other thing we have in this chapter is Fael asks Perrin what he's going to do because Moraine said, just stay put. And so Perrin's response is, first I'm going to have something to eat. Then I'm going to think about a hammer. Like, I'm sure she's like, okay, whatever.
That sounds like a euphemism of some kind. Like,
and I think, in fact, it does mention that he's also going to think about Fael. He is going to think about his hammer and his axe, but he's probably also going to think about Fael. And whether or not he actually
I was thinking more, it's like, hey, I have to go visit the men's room. I've got to...
Right.
I got to go think about a hammer, if you know what I'm talking about.
There hasn't been a lot of downtime.
Right.
Downtime you can get, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're up to chapter 51 here.
Right. Yeah, 51 of 56. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Nynaeve... once again, someone sees Rand out of the corner of her eye, probably. And once again, she just kind of dismisses, that couldn't be Rand. Why would he be here? He's hundreds of miles from here. Why couldn't you guys have coordinated a little bit, when you were going to get in the sound? Like, have a meetup spot. and there's even a crazy Ta'Veren moment that happens right after she sees him. This fisherman drops a basket full of fish, and they all land in a circle sticking up in the mud. Why was that not a little more obvious to you that was Rand's doing? But no, that was just really for us more so than for Nynaeve, I would say. Nynaeve goes with Julin, who's under compulsion at this point by Leandrin to make him betray our three heroes, so he leads Nynaeve into an ambush. Leandrin cuts her off from the power, so Nynaeve punches her in the face, which is... There you go. That's one of those things. Go Power Rangers. That we got to have that happen. Punches. Yes. And Leandra is so shocked. She's like all smug, like, I've cut you off from the power. Like, well, Nynaeve can still punch you in the face. I did watch the first 2 episodes of Power Rangers Ninja Steel because I wanted to see Zoe Robbins in action, and it is pretty much what I expected. It's Power Rangers. There's a lot of very obvious toys, merchandising toys and it's like, I don't know, I'm just a little surprised that their various accoutrements just look like toys. Anyway, The acting is what you'd expect.
Yes.
All that is an aside. Leandrin reveals kind of her master plan to use, or I guess it's really Bilal's master plan to use the 3 of them as bait to get to Rand. And then after they've drawn Rand in, they're going to turn them to the shadow with a circle of Murdral. So real pleasant conversation all around.
Sure, right.
So anyway, then we get back to Matt and Tom, and we see why Tom has been coughing up a storm for the past few days or chapters. It's so Matt has a reason to go visit a wise woman. Of course he does, and of course that's how we find out what happens to the ladies. Matt leaves Tom with Mother Gwenna, and Tom, of course, is protesting, but Matt's like, you're sick, man. I'm going to do this on my own. And he sets out to figure out how to get into the stone. And this might be the first time he hears dice tumbling in his head, actually,
I think so, yeah.
As opposed to just it being like he knowing his luck is in. When the dice are tumbling in his head, he doesn't know if it's going to be good or bad. It's like at some point the dice are going to land and something good or bad is going to happen.
This is something that I've talked about a few times with different folks. It's such a major thing with Matt's character throughout the books, and this is the first time we run into it, that he hears the dice rattling in his head. And what does that mean? He's never really sure, only that something is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it may happen soon, it may happen a little while from now, but it's kind of this almost dread that he feels from once he starts to kind of realize that that's what it means. And yet, how do you do that on a television show? Do you have him pause and say, gee, the dice in my head are rattling, and what does that even mean?
Right.
My suggestion for that is I hope they come up with a theme for Matt that kind of indicates when the dice would be rattling, and maybe even have the sound of dice rattling as a part of the theme.
Oh, that's good.
And maybe not even totally say explicitly this right now means that Matt feels like there's dice rattling in his head. But for fans of the book, then okay, we get it. This is part where he is kind of feeling that, I don't know, something's happening kind of feeling that he gets when the dice are rolling.
That's good. Yeah, it gets to a core problem converting fiction in the novel form to fiction and TV show, movie, whatever it might be. Just the exposition we get in a character's head, their thoughts, their motivations that the author can just tell us in some cases, and we just can't get that. There's no, thought bubble over their head in the TV show. Although if there was, I'd be open to that, but it's just not typically how they handle things.
That would be pretty different, and this would be a strange property to start doing that.
It would. Yeah. It's like the difference between early Fantastic Four, where every character would literally just yell everything. Like, I'm going to do this now. This is happening to me now, till later when they're thinking it. Or when you have, just a little thing that's saying what's happening, as opposed to, it's jarring to go back and read like Fantastic Four #1 or any comic from that era or earlier, and just see how often people are just yelling about what they're doing. It's definitely a difference, and it's something that has to be addressed anytime you're making that transition.
Mm.
So Perrin is busy being awkward around Fail, working in the smithy, being kind of clumsy, and generally not doing a very good job relating to her. She tells him he should grow a beard.
Yes.
And then Moraine is the first one who actually realizes Rand is in tear, and not because she saw him, but presumably because her eyes and ears did. She orders everyone back to Tar Valon, but when Fail goes upstairs, she triggers a trap, which is a Tir Angriel, that kicks her into Teleron Riyadh and in the Wolf Dream. So Moraine says she's not dead, but her spirit is not with her body. And this was not a trap meant for her. It was a trap meant for probably Perrin or Moraine. So Perrin kind of knows what he has to do. He asks Loyal to guard the door and says he's going in there after her. So he walks into the room, and then he's just in the Wolf Dream, who sees Hopper, and Hopper says that tells him he's there too strongly. And it does this does sort of like raise the question a little bit, like, is Hopper always just sort of nearby in Teleran Riyadh? Like, just imagine like a dream wolf walking by his side, and when he doesn't know it's there.
I feel like somebody needs to do a mashup of Hopper from Stranger Things, like talking to Perrin in the Wolf Dream.
Right. That's good. I like that. I would watch that.
Just like telling him, "Hey, man, you're here too strongly," and he's like, "Where? Oh, the Upside Down."
Right.
We could pass each other, and then that would be a real twist. The Upside Down is the Wolf Dream.
Red. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. See the Demogorgon, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think this is a bit of a turning point for Perrin when he starts to realize that he does really care about Fail. The prospect of losing her, of her dying from a trap that was meant for him, really drives home the point to him that she's, not just this kind of like woman that's been following him around, but is important to him.
I do love the detail before he races into Teleon Riyadh, that when he turns to Loyal and says, "Guard the door," that Loyal says, "None will pass me while I live."
And Perrin is reminded that Loyal, even though he's gentle, is this huge, massive like creature, great big man. So
you got to have somebody
guard the door. Yeah,
guard the door. He probably could be pretty good at it.
So in chapter 54, we are fully into the climactic finale at this point, which lasts 2 full chapters. So better check in on every prospective character in every chapter from here on out, really. Yeah. Because we have to kind of close out all the various plot lines. We find Matt trying to get into the stone via the rooftops and nearly gets knifed by Ruark and his amazing Aiel friends. And then kind of like says, "Hey, guys, we're all friends here." Julian Sandar shows up because why not? Why wouldn't he be there at that point? He agrees to help Matt go get the ladies out, or because he feels bad about what happened even though it wasn't really his fault that Leandrin put him under compulsion. He doesn't understand that. All he knows is he betrayed the 3 ladies. Then Matt blows a hole in the stone using some of Eludra's fireworks. Chekhov's fireworks have shown back up. Here we are. Yep. And so they enter the stone. Next, we get a little paragraph of Rand laughing to himself, not crazily at all, inside the stone. Apparently, he just climbed up the side, but he is Aiel after all, so that tracks to a certain degree. Same thing he did in Camelin, I suppose. Egwene thinks that she can still get to the world of dreams, even though they are shielded in Tyr in the stone, and she's right, which is interesting. Interesting that a few things here. Interesting that they didn't search her and take her twisted ring Tirangriel. Like, guys, you're really being Black Aja, really being sloppy. Like, that was really dumb.
Right.
Interesting that she can enter the world of dreams while shielded, which I think is probably fair to say if she had the Tirangriel that the Black Aja has, they require you to channel spirit.
Right.
She wouldn't have been able to, but the one that Varen gave her doesn't require channeling at all. So she was able to get into the world of dreams. And the fact that she can channel in the world of dreams while shielded in the real world and can't channel there. It's a kind of interesting point that I don't really quite understand, but it makes sense, I suppose.
Well, it does go towards the fact that, in general, all the Aes Sedai, Black Aja or otherwise, don't understand Teleon Riad or the rules of it.
True.
So the fact that they wouldn't know that she could still access it, and of course that she can channel and all these other things, it would make sense that they wouldn't know about it, because it seems like none of the Aes Sedai actually knew anything about it, really.
Varen knows as much as anyone, and even what she knows is sketched out at best. Perrin and Hopper are fighting guards in the Wolf Dream, in the Stone of Tyr, trying to get to Fael, and get a kind of a montage of Perrin going back and forth between wolf and human, trying to find her, and he thinks he's found her, kind of lets her go, and then she disappears again, and he's like, what the heck, man? And Hopper's like, yeah, it's the dream. Things aren't always what they seem, basically.
Princess is in another castle.
Exactly. Then Matt is fighting High Lord Darlin, who is a character later in the series, after the fact that Matt just knocks him out. Just doesn't kill him, knocks him out, but he's a very good swordsman. He's like not wearing shoes. He's just like, I will take you up down, and Matt whacks him in the head, knocks him out. Mm-hmm. And we get a comical moment where Matt and Julian are kind of arguing, and Julian is insisting about being called a thief catcher, not thief taker. And then Matt swings his staff up on his shoulder and accidentally whacks another High Lord in the head.
Yeah.
He's trying to sneak up on them, like, oh, crud. There was another one. So we should be more careful. Lots of good moments.
Yeah, there's a lot of lightheartedness in all of these books. I hope that plays into, and I'm optimistic, given that Rafe Judkins, showrunner, worked on Chuck and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And Chuck obviously is as much a comedy as anything. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has always had a good peppering of light moments. And I just feel like that's so much a part of the books, that you have those kinds of things that every once in a while, a guy just gets knocked in the head on accident. And,
right. Tavirian luck. Yeah.
Yes, Tavirian. Yes.
So he and Julian are looking for a shortcut passage that the High Lords use to get to the jail cells, and then we get really the big finale chapter. We get another chapter that's coming down, but chapter 55 is the big chapter, and it's the closest we get to an actual proper Rand chapter, because you have to have Rand for this part. It's pretty important. Rand enters the chamber containing Kalendor, and Bilal introduces himself. Just walks up, introduces himself. This is when it made me think that, the scene from the cover never really happens.
Right.
It's because Perrin is off in the Wolf Ring, being a wolf, and Matt is busy rescuing the ladies with Julian when all this is going down. Bilal tells him to take hold of his Jedi weapon and strike me down. Wait, never mind. Says, take Kalendor and defend yourself. And then he makes a black sword of Saidin, and Rand responds by making his usual, red sword of Saidin, and they get to lightsaber. And this does seem kind of cool, because how often is it that they're, these two, they're both, have the swords made out of power that are fighting, and just imagine the sparks flying, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Notably, Bilal's glowy blade also has a heron branded on it, and it's clear that he actually is a blade master and is better than Rand at this whole thing, and Rand is generally just kind of defending himself, trying to keep himself alive. In the background, Aiel show up, start fighting Defenders of the Stone, which probably would be pretty epic battle, even though the Defenders never had a snowball's chance in Sheol Goal to beat him. It really does make me wonder, what the heck would a sword made out of Saidin feel like? Would he make it weigh the right amount, or would it just be pure energy and not have any heft it all. I guess he could weight it with flows of earth, but it doesn't seem like he probably knows how to do that at this point. Anyway, not super important. Just
what are you talking about? All of this stuff is incredibly important.
Touche, sir. Touche. So Rand trips over a dead dude and falls down, and Bilal is still trying really hard to get him to take Kalendor, but he's really just getting tired of it. I think he's ready to kill Rand, and we're about to be done with this whole thing. But then Moraine blows him away with balefire. Just shows up, busts out the balefire, and he even, like, as it happens, is like, no! He knows what happens. Because Bilal is killed with balefire, he ain't coming back. And that's a key point, that the rest of them are spun back out fairly quickly, or a lot of them are, with new faces, new names, sometimes new genders. But Bilal is not, because he's been blown out of the pattern altogether.
I really hope that the entry, that it's a little bit like the end of Captain Marvel, when Yanrog is saying to her, see if you can keep your emotions, and then she just blows him away, like, in mid-sentence. I would love it if Bilal is monologuing about how he's going to become nameless and all this and everything, and then the door just bursts open and,
Yes.
By the way, I really hope that balefire makes a really wicked sound, that it's like some kind of, in addition to being a white hot
white light,
bar of
molten fire or whatever,
molten fire. Yeah, I want it to just sound ridiculous. I don't know why that's not in the book, but that's my own kind of headcanon of it.
I like it. I think it's a great idea. And that also makes me think, so realizing what balefire does, why don't they kill all of the Forsaken with balefire? Like, this is just one of those places where they needed to coordinate a little better.
I'm wondering at this point, and we're getting a tiny bit spoilery here, but we are coming down to the ending.
Right.
I'm just wondering if they don't know that balefire is really the only way to permanently.
Right, that's true. Yeah, I don't know why they would know. That's a fair point. It's not like they've killed a bunch of Forsaken and had them spun back out into the pattern. So it's one of those things. Like, the next time, maybe if Rand had all of Lews Therin's memories and really kind of had internalized them, he would know. But
maybe. So
Moraine tells Rand to take Kalendor, but then Ba'alzamon has been, like, hiding in the rafters, disguised as a thundercloud or as a shadow or something. It's just kind of a fun image, and he just kind of backhands him magically. I'm not really sure, but something that has a major knockback, and it knocks Rand into Kalendor. So, which, Rand was about to die probably, but knocked him right into Kalendor. So that was probably a bit of a miscalculation there, ish, old boy. So as soon as he realizes that, he's like, "Oh crap!" And Ba'alzamon hightails it out of there through Tai'Shar Riyadh. Rand sees what he did, and since he has the power of Kalendor coursing through him, Rand opens a portal, tears a hole in reality, not really knowing what he's doing, and follows Ba'alzamon and says, "I am the hunter now." So Egwene is still in Tai'Shar Riyadh and sees her captor. So she's in Tai'Shar Riyadh, outside of the room where she's being held, but of course in the real world. And she sees her captor drifting in and out of sleep. So she's, like, sometimes there and sometimes not, while shielding them, which is an interesting kind of, like, the idea that you could be in and out of Tai'Shar Riyadh at the same time. We get more of that later. Amiko is shielded, but
that's right.
They still can't get out because the door's locked, basically.
Yeah.
But that's when Matt gets there and lets him out. And Nynaeve thanks him by telling him to watch his language. And then Nynaeve punches Amiko Nagoyan, which causes her to be stilled by breaking her weave and knocking her out. But heck of a left hook for how many people can say they stilled somebody by punching them. Nynaeve can. Perrin saves Fael finally, and they get out of the wolf stream. And this is when Perrin finally calls her Fael, and this is when he realizes he has the hots for her. Really, it's kind of clear at this point. Back to Rand, where we learn that Kalendor is, I guess, the thing that can counter balefire. Makes sense. Ba'alzamon kind of stealth balefires him, and he kind of, like, blocks it with his lightsaber and knocks it away. Rand manages to, then he kills him with the questionable line, "You are destroyed, you are undone," and stabs him in the chest. Rand stabbed Ba'alzamon in the chest. I didn't think that was a bit of a line. But even in dying, this dude sticks with his delusions and yells, "Fool, the great Lord of the Dark cannot be defeated." So I would say Rand can be kind of forgiven for thinking that he did indeed kill the Dark One. And let's just go ahead and call off the last battle. That whole unpleasantness won't be necessary.
Right.
But so Rand comes out of the dream, sees that there is a dead man there who just kind of disintegrates. And
just a regular dead guy, though. As
right. So you would think he would realize, okay, a dead guy wouldn't be.
I think they should have Billy Zane come and just play just the dead body. So at this point, it's no longer. Moraine says it may have been Ishamael that built.
Right. So that's when Rand should understand and does understand that he has not killed the Dark One, but thinks he has. He really does.
The joke there for folks who didn't understand the Billy Zane joke, there was a really terrible misfired pilot that was an attempt to hang on to the rights by the company that had bought the rights for television a few years ago. It wasn't even that long ago, I want to say. And it was purely just to keep the rights. And it was aired at like 2 a.m.
Right.
Harriet McDougal had nothing to do with it. She was really upset about it. And it was awful. And Billy Zane, who I have nothing against, and I actually like as an actor,
sure.
He played Ishamael in this pilot, which all it was is the prologue scene
called The Winter Dragon. If you'd like to Google it and be horrified,
yeah, you can find it. It's pretty terrible all the way around. Fun fact: the guy who directed it died a month later in a car accident.
Oh gosh,
not the funnest fact, actually. But I actually think that would be an awesome meta joke if Ishamael's dead body was Billy Zane.
Definitely. I like it.
And like, don't have Billy Zane play Baelzamon. Right. Whatever.
Yeah. Just for when he dies, so she reveal his true face.
Yeah.
After it would be flames go out of his eyes and everything. So Rand comes out of Elrond Riyadh, announces that he's the Dragon Reborn, and everyone stops fighting. The Aiel and the Defenders alike kneel and stop killing each other.
Yep.
Then we get our kind of post-climactic final chapter.
Our denouement.
Yeah, our everybody meet up and compare notes. Not enough notes, but a little bit. We find out that the Aiel are the people of the dragon, so that kind of explains why Moraine had never heard of them in the prophecies of the dragon. The people of the dragon are the Aiel. And Ruark kind of rolls up his sleeve and shows the dragon tattoo that he has there that all clan chiefs get in Roydion. And we get a little bit of foreshadowing about Roydion and what the next several books will be about, really. Lanfear passes a note to Moraine via Barrelane saying that Rand is hers and to lay off.
So Barrelane just walks in.
Right. Yeah, that's I think maybe the first time we encounter her.
Yes, it absolutely is. I did not at all catch the first time I read this that it mentions that I think it's either her crown or something she's wearing has her sigil, which is a hawk.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it.
I'm just pointing that out, you guys. I'm not saying anything else.
Right.
just pointing it out. Barrelane is described as beautiful, as gorgeous, as voluptuous, and she's the first of Mayen. I wish they had done a better job of explaining what that was. First of all, when that first happened, I was like, what the heck is the first of Mayen? That's the ruler of Mayen, which is a city-state near Tyr.
Yep.
It's also, I think, the smallest country in the Westlands.
Yeah, it's pretty much dominated by Tyr, generally speaking.
Barrelane's actually a pretty formidable ruler, which is why it's maintained some level of independence from Tyr. Otherwise, it would have been absorbed by it.
Right. The only other real major point is that Egwene establishes Baelzamon was not in fact the Dark One, but was probably Ishamael. And we kind of name off, well, how many of them are left? And it's well, there's at least 9. Of course, we know there will be some that will come back. It is interesting how we have two of them bited in the end of this book. It's whoa, we need these back. We only have a few of these. We need them for our boss battles.
Yeah.
2 of them dying in one chapter. Man, whoa.
You also have here the last time in the series that everybody, your main core characters are all in the same place at the end of a book.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Yeah, everybody kind of goes their separate ways. I mean, when Perrin leaves to go back to the Two Rivers, like he is separated from the rest of them for a long time. And then Matt stays longer, but
yeah. So we'll go ahead and say, even though we've already said a couple little things, let's go ahead and just say spoiler warning from here on out. If you're reading through the books the first time, we're going to get into probably a few more of the more spoilerly things. So you might want to stop here as we get up to the end. But was there anything in the latter half of this book that just struck you this being your second or third read through or whatever?
I like this book. I like it less than book 2. It's paced fairly well. It's weird to read it the way I read it this last time, with an eye for more detail and taking notes, almost reading it like like for a book report or something. I never had read any of these books like that before, and it definitely lends itself to a totally different experience in good and bad ways. You get more detail, but you also kind of it's easier to see flaws. But I don't know. What about you?
Well, in the way of things that benefit of having read the whole book series, the first time through, in no way was it indicated that Aviendha was anybody important.
Sure. Yeah, it could have been just a throwaway random Aiel that they met on the road, and that was it. Exactly,
because we've already run into that a few times where we run into
in the setting, or the Aiel men that they met on the road that they expected Varian to kill him.
Right, exactly.
I guess the difference would be that there was the kind of tow, that she felt like she owed the three of them a debt for saving her friend. But you'd feel like that was kind of paid off by when they saved the three of them from the Dark Friends. You could almost see how that could be just, okay, it's done. It's all that's been done.
Yeah, you don't get much of an indication. And because it names several of the different Fire Darius Mai there when they're all standing there, she just kind of bled in with them. And so when the next book, they try to kind of start to separate her out a little bit.
Yeah, the only thing we get there is the fact that Bane or Chiad mentions the Wise Ones and how no Faris Darius Mai will give up the spear, unless they give up the spear for a man, or if the Wise Ones force them to. And they say something like, no matter how much you might not want to, or whatever.
And they look over at her.
A little bit of foreshadowing about her.
Yeah,
they kind of laugh and look over at her, and
she kind of gives him a frustrated glance or something,
because she knows that she's gonna have to give up the spear to become a Wise One, because she is. And one thing, this is interesting. We hear often about how the Aes Sedai can detect people's general strength and the power. You'd think that would have come up where Nynaeve, Egwene, Elaine would be like, "Wait a minute, you can channel,
right?
You?
Yeah,
and you're strong too."
They do kind of a little bit of a retcon thing, I think, in the next book when Egwene finds out that Aviendha can channel. She was like, yeah, I kind of knew that.
Right. I felt a kinship to you. I felt like you were my sister. Yeah. That's
and I feel like there should have been something that in here where they indicated that they knew she could channel, especially since Aviendha is one of the stronger female channelers.
I think she's on the same level as Egwene and Elaine. Is the general feel, not as strong as Nynaeve, but stronger than most Aes Sedai generally.
Right, exactly. And I mean, she demonstrates it pretty not long after we find out that she can channel. You start to see different things that she can do in the following books, that even things that Egwene and Elaine don't know how to do because they learn different skills, Wise Ones from Aes Sedai.
Right. Yeah, they have a totally different approach in how to train people in the power. It seems like the Wise Ones are much more kind of practical. Let's just learn how to use this to fight and maybe to heal, and it's not as academic. It's more of a community college experience.
Yeah, I was about to say, the Wise Ones are the trade school of the One Power.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just, it's like, guys, there's no reason for us to get into researching why it is that all this does what it does.
Look, here's how to throw a fireball. You're going to need to know how to do that the next time we have a blood feud or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And they also have no compunction about using the power to fight. They don't have an oath. They're not taking oaths that prevent them from doing that. Although they wouldn't typically, I don't think they would typically like use it on other Aiel, but it is they're willing to use the power for violence if they need to, pretty much.
Right. Absolutely. There's a lot of interesting bits going back with the benefit of knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Throughout this whole book, coming to tier where, as they say, they've forbidden channeling and they're all against it and everything, and yet their whole prophecy is about, well, when the dragon shows up, he's going to be in charge.
And he is, and they don't love that, but they're like, okay, I guess we'll accept it. And I do love the kind of the hints about Aiel we get throughout, the little tidbits of their culture and their history. And then, of course, we get into that far more fully in the next two books, really the next book. And if you don't like the Aiel, like, sorry, you're going to get a lot more of them. But if you do, it's really interesting to see their backstory and to learn more about them and learn about their connection to the Way of the Leaf and the Tuatha and the Aes Sedai and the Jin Aiel. All that stuff is everything about Roidion is really good stuff. It's really interesting.
It's very interesting.
Definitely look forward to talking about that as well.
Yep. So we are going to start doing a few episodes in between to kind of cover more news as it comes out. As always, I just want to remind you that you can contact us. Visit our website at tsmpodcast.com. You can email either of us, either Will or Sam. That's Will with 2 L's, Sam with 1 M, at TSM Podcast.
As opposed to Samael with 2 M's.
Yes, exactly. If you want to visit our website, you can go on there. It allows you to subscribe to any different service that you use to listen to podcasts. It's a great way to share the podcast with other folks. You can take our audience survey. The contact form at the bottom is another great way to get in contact with us. All of those great things. So please do that. As I always say, we would love to hear from you. Yes, indeed, fair enough. All those things that Sam likes to say at the end of stuff. I guess that'll be my cliche. We'll get a t-shirt that says fair enough on one side and it'll say we love to hear from you on the other. If you do contact us, then we will try to mention you on the podcast if you have something relevant to say to the series. If you just say something funny, maybe we'll share it if it's funny enough. And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. And until then, Tai'Shar Manetheren.